Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are safe and keeping well. My name is Megan Stovall-McKnight, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. I will be your moderator for today's episode of Future Forward, as our President and CEO, Michael Burns, is taking a very well-deserved week off. I'm glad to see that so many of you have tuned in today for our third episode of Future Forward. It is clear that our work being undertaken by our brilliant clinicians and scientists continues to inspire and engage our donors and supporters, even during these uncertain times. Cancer continues to be the most fatal disease in Canada. And just as cancer will not relent during this pandemic, neither will the Princess Margaret. We must keep up the pace of discovery today and long after COVID has passed. During today's session, collaborating globally, Response Study Spotlight, 3 of our brilliant scientists will bring you up to date on the latest research being conducted at the Princess Margaret. You'll hear how they're contributing to the global fight against COVID-19 while at the same time maintaining an intense focus on our main priority, conquering cancer. Before I introduce our speakers, on behalf of the Princess Margaret, I'd like to begin by thanking you for your incredible support. Thanks to your generosity and vision, the Princess Margaret has become one of the top 5 cancer research centers in the world. You have enabled our cancer centers to recruit leading clinicians and scientists from all around the world, all of whom are breaking the boundaries of cancer research and care each and every day. With your ongoing support and the incredible work of these leading scientists and clinicians, we will continue to make great strides in our vision to conquer cancer in our lifetime. There is a donate button on our Slido page. And if you enjoy what you hear today, please consider contributing. I would now like to introduce you to Dr. Aaron Shimmer. Dr. Schimmer is our Director of Research and a Senior Scientist at Princess Margaret Cancer Center. He joined us as an active clinician and researcher in 2003 and has since established a vibrant and highly collaborative translational research program. His research focuses on developing innovative treatment strategies that target leukemia and leukemia stem cells. The 20-strong Schimmer laboratory has already brought 3 compounds from bench into clinical trials. Dr. Schimmer's work has resulted in more than 15 patent applications, over 35 prestigious research awards, and he is a 3-time winner of the Invest in Research competition at the Princess Margaret. Welcome, Dr. Schimmer.
Hi there, Megan. Good to be here with you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Stephen Chan. He is a clinician scientist at Princess Margaret Cancer Center and an assistant professor at the University of Toronto. Dr. Chan received his medical and research training at Stanford University in California, where he earned his MD and PhD in immunology. He completed his internal medicine residency and adult hematology fellowship at Stanford Hospital and Clinics. He joined the leukemia program at the Princess Margaret in 2015. His research focus has been to develop new ways to target mutations that have been identified through whole genome sequencing in the past 10 years. More recently, his research has extended to the prevention of leukemia. Dr. Chan views this as one of the main challenges facing cancer research today, beating cancer before it happens. Welcome, Dr. Chan.
Hi, everyone.
And last but not least is Dr. Stephanie Lheureux. She is site lead for gynecologic oncology and a clinician scientist at the Princess Margaret, as well as an assistant professor in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto. She earned her MD in medical oncology and PhD in translational research in France before coming to the Princess Margaret for a clinical research fellowship to focus on gynecological cancers and early phase clinical trials. She serves on the ovarian task force for the National Cancer Institute Gynecologic Cancer Steering Committee. She is a principal investigator for several international studies and is involved in the development of early phase clinical trials with an emphasis on drug development and translational research in gynecologic cancers. Welcome, Dr. Lheureux.
Hi, everyone.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. We're so excited to hear from the 3 of you about the groundbreaking work being done at the Princess Margaret. But before we get to the science, how have you been doing? How are your families? We'll start with you, Dr. Schimmer.
Yeah, thanks for asking. We've been good. It's been busy. You know, we're working hard on the research end, trying to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve and prepared. So it's been a lot of work. But with respect to my family, yes, we're doing well. But you know, things have become a bit different, shall we say, in life. So date night is now the big trip to the grocery store, and travel means a walk around the block. But we're doing okay.
It's a great night out. It's a great night out. How about you, Dr. Chan?
Yeah, same here. Thanks for asking. My family's doing well. Like Dr. Schimmer said, there are a lot of changes in our routine. I have to say, I'm very happy. I finally got a haircut this past weekend with social distancing, of course, but very happy about that. So, but we're
Yeah,
healthy. Thank you.
I think that's been the highlight of many people's week in the last couple of weeks, depending on where you live. Yeah. And how about you, Dr. Lheureux?
The hair is long, so you don't see if I cut it or not. So that's good. So it has been quite challenging for the family, for the patient, and for the team as well.
Yeah.
Has been a lot of adaptation, and I think I also learned as a working woman how much actually I rely on a network of people to be able to do the work I'm doing every day. And also the power of a hug. I feel like, that is really something that I discovered during this pandemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. Beautiful insights. I agree. Our first question, our next question is to you, Dr. Schimmer. Research at the Princess Margaret was affected by the pandemic pretty significantly. Would you please tell us about how the current state of cancer research is at the Cancer Center?
Sure, happy to do that. It's been remarkable as you think back just to what has happened since as early as middle of March. And it was probably around the beginning of March, as COVID was just starting to begin to be a concern in North America, that we started to think, maybe having large in-person meetings of scientists and clinicians wouldn't be a good idea. And so we curtailed around the beginning of March these large group meetings. But, things escalated and moved quickly. And so we went from just stopping large group meetings to, by the middle of March, we had actually completely shut down the research labs as a way to keep everyone and our staff safe. But relatively short after shutting down the research labs, the attention then turned to how can we restart in a way that's safe and keeps our staff and ultimately our clinical trial participants and all of our patients safe. Because the reality is that COVID is going to pass, but cancer is going to remain a problem. And we really can't lose the tremendous momentum that we had built over these years prior to COVID. And so we're now in the process of restarting research. We had, in June, opened our research labs at 25% density, recently moved to increasing that to 50% density with many masking and social distancing and other policies put in place to keep everyone staying safe. And now we're looking at how best to ensure that we don't lose that tremendous momentum that we built up. The analogy I try to give, it's sort of like a car race. First we were under the red flag, went into the pits to retool, and now the yellow flag is out. And I think the key is going to be how we position our car so that when the green flag does drop, we're at the front of the pack and racing ahead. And thanks to the foundation and our great scientists, I think we're being able to make those strategic investments to ensure that we're going to emerge from this strong and continue in our work against cancer.
We also know that some teams were able to pivot to COVID-19 research, and we're going to hear from a couple of them today. Could you set the stage a bit for our viewers about what our researchers are doing to contribute to the global fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, delighted to. It's remarkable when you think about it that our researchers who are focused and engaged exclusively on cancer have been able to reposition, pivot, and use their talents in our global fight against COVID-19. You're going to hear some fantastic examples from Dr. Lheureux and Dr. Chen today. But our investigators have been contributing to the development of new diagnostics, new therapeutics, and even vaccines that are having an impact not only just here locally, but around the world. And our investigators are contributing across the spectrum of research. So contributing in clinical research, testing of new approaches for the treatment of COVID in patients here, translational research, where we're leveraging our understanding of basic fundamental pathways related to COVID-19 and moving those into clinical trial, and including fundamental basic research around the COVID-19 virus. And you might even think, well, why is it important to even study fundamental properties of a COVID-19 virus? How's that going to pay dividends now in our fight against COVID? But even that research, I think, is critical because, yes, it's going to inform in part our treatments against COVID-19, but bear in mind that COVID-19 is in the coronavirus family. And it's the same family of virus that caused SARS back in 2003, that caused MERS a little bit more recently. And, to be honest with you, may be also a cause of a future pandemic. So investing in basic research around COVID-19 is going to become important to inform on future strategies for what may be future pandemics. And the final point that I would just like to make is that one of the reasons that our progress more globally against COVID-19 has been so rapid a vaccine in late stage of clinical development by the end of this month, testing that was able to be unveiled within just weeks of understanding this virus. That's really been due to long-standing investment in science that we've been making here, but around the world over the last few decades. Even, believe it or not, investments in cancer research have been paying off in their fight against COVID-19. The investments that we're making here in Princess Margaret, but even more globally. It's those reasons and the investments made, for example, in the genetic sequencing of cancer mutations, and that investment's actually been what's been used to move to rapid large-scale testing for COVID-19 and allowed us to rapidly identify this virus. To conclude with one 30-second point, even back in 2003 in SARS, it took almost 2 weeks to get a positive test result because it just took that long. Thanks to the investments in cancer research, we're turning that test result around in a day, maybe even 15 minutes.
It's just phenomenal. It's just the progress. It's incredible. Thank you. It's so exciting. Dr. Chan, before the pandemic, your lab was focused on leukemia and stem cells, and you've been able to transition into research related to COVID-19 by looking at the effects of a cancer drug on the coronavirus. How did that study come about? Tell us a little bit more about what's going on in your lab these days.
Yeah, happy to address that. So the study really came about around middle of March when one of my colleagues, Dr. Vikas Gupta, and I realized that the severe complications associated with COVID-19 infection may be related to an overdrive of the immune response. And this sort of hyperinflammation response is similar to what we see in some patients with a rare blood disorder known as myelofibrosis. Now, the current treatment for myelofibrosis is using a drug known as ruxolitinib that really acts by dampening this inflammatory response. And because of this connection, we ask if, we wonder if ruxolitinib can also be used and repurposed to treat patients with severe COVID. So we were able to develop the protocol and get this study started and up and running within a relatively short period of time, much faster than what it would be normally. And that's really thanks to all the hard work that people have done at UHN and also at Health Canada. So the study is now active at 5 sites in Ontario, including Princess Margaret, Toronto General, Toronto Western, South Lake Regional, and Windsor Regional. And we were fortunate to get funding to support this study as well. So although the number of cases, as you know, has gone down recently, which is of course great news, but we are hopeful that we will still be able to recruit sufficient patients in the next 6 months to really see if this strategy works. Now, apart from the COVID-related research, my lab has continued to study leukemia and find ways to fight it. As you mentioned earlier, one of my interests is the prevention of leukemia. Can we identify individuals at high risk of developing leukemia and prevent its development in the first place? So I think we have made some very important progress on that front in recent months, and we are hopeful to eventually transition our findings from the lab to the clinics. And I think with the support of the foundation and donors, I'm very hopeful that this can happen soon.
Awesome. Dr. Lheureux, question for you. We know that after the pandemic, cancer will still be a major issue for Canadians, affecting 1 in 2 in their lifetime. Normally, your clinical research is in the area of gynecological cancers, but now with the pandemic, you've focused on different aspects of COVID-19 as it relates to cancer patients and their outcomes. Tell us about the work that's being done by your team to understand the intersection between cancer and COVID-19.
Yes, thank you. As you say, cancer is not going away, and it seems that COVID-19 will be with us for some time as well. So it's why our team came together to try to see how we can continue to deliver safely patient treatment that they need for their cancer while there's still COVID-19 around us. The only way to try to deliver safely our treatment, we need to know more about the COVID-19, how it's transmitted, how is the impact on cancer patients. And that was really important because recent study show that the patient who have cancer and currently undergo treatment may be more at risk of COVID-19 complication than the patient who do not have cancer. So it was for our team was really important to try to see if we can learn more about the COVID-19 and what is the impact in terms of cancer treatment. So thanks to the effort of big group of people, from the clinical trial development to the physician enrolled in the trial. And we were able to build this trial, and as Stephen just said, very quickly. And that was really amazing how it came together very quickly. So we now propose to patients to be tested systematically for the COVID-19 before they start the treatment, but also while they're on treatment. So we try to follow the evolution of potentially or not the COVID-19 through the NP swab, but also we're trying to develop this blood test as well to see if they gain some immunity or not of the COVID-19 while they go on treatment. Because we know that cancer treatment may impact the immunity, and we don't know how the immunity will eventually impact the infection or the susceptibility of COVID-19. So it's why we're doing this test on a regular basis in our patients. And that will be very important to understand how we can develop the response for this specific virus, but as Aaron mentioned, potentially to other viruses as well, because we may face other pandemic as well. So it's very important to know the impact also of our treatment in the immune system. And that was good to do this study, which is also called the response study, to try to respond appropriately for cancer patients across different tumor types. So that is not necessarily due for gynae, but definitely I continue to treat gynae patients and remain my focus. So definitely I work with a lot of great people from the hematological side, from the surgical side, and from the radiation side as well, to try to assess the impact of our treatment for our cancer patients regarding potential immune change or proteomic change while this COVID-19 pandemic is ongoing.
Amazing. Just both the work and the quick response, aptly named, of your lab and Dr. Chan's. It's incredible. Dr. Schimmer, listening to Stephanie and Stephen talk about their exciting work, it's obvious there have been a lot of changes of how we conduct research as a result of the pandemic, even just the speed at which these new studies have started. How do you think this is going to change the landscape for cancer research going forward after the pandemic?
Yeah, so that's a good question. You know, there's a very long list of all the terrible impacts that COVID-19 has had, but it's interesting to think back and reflect on the positive things that have actually emerged as a result of the crisis. And you've certainly hit on one of them, is the rapid pace which we've been able to demonstrate that we can move from concept for an idea into launching a clinical trial. The trials that you've heard from Drs. Chan and Lheureux, each of those could have easily taken a year to go from the time of thinking about the idea to actually starting it. But they were able to do this in approximately 2 weeks, a dramatic acceleration. And I think it highlights that it is possible to move very quickly from idea or from the lab to the clinic. And while this may not be truly sustainable after COVID completely, I think a lot of the lessons that we've learned are going to be sustainable. And I think we will be able to accelerate our timelines on many things. The other thing which I think is positive that we've seen is the tremendous collaborations within investigators, within this institution, between institutions, and between academics and industry. Everyone sort of coming together with the common purpose. And I anticipate certainly that spirit will continue even beyond COVID and play a major impact in helping us accelerate our progress in cancer.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Both they say necessity is the mother of invention, and very much seeing that take place here. Stephen and Stephanie, how have you been able to leverage your global networks to accelerate and advance your COVID-19 related research? We'll start with you, Dr. Chan.
Yeah, great question. So in fact, there is a global consortium composed of researchers around the world who are interested in using ruxolitinib and other related drugs for the treatment of COVID-19. And this was all started from a researcher at University of Colorado. So we're now having virtual meetings every 2 weeks to basically provide each other updates and feedback on what's going on. It is certainly very reassuring to know that there are many other groups out there who have the same idea and pursuing a common goal. And this global network has really allowed us to realize the issues that are associated with the use of this drug, learn from their experience, and also allowed us then to improve our design of our clinical trial. So that component has been very important for our study.
Awesome, awesome. Dr. Lheureux, how about you?
Yeah, so definitely the global network is very important. First, because it's a global effort. I think it's one of the first time that this virus have touched the entire globe. So I think to make sure that we don't, overdo different research and make sure that we collaborate together, I think is very key. Here also, our response to what also in terms of collaboration, what was very good, as just Aaron mentioned, is, I'm mainly focusing on gynecological cancer. So to be able to do this kind of study, I had to reach out to my colleague. And actually, that was an amazing experience. I was able to work with, Dr. Pavik from the hematological side. I was able to work with Dr. Diamonda from the surgical side, Dr. Milosevic for the radiation side, and with great scientists as well that have developed potentially this serology test as well to eventually detect if patient gain immunity or not. And also work with David Brooks to the immune signature to try to see what is the impact of different treatment on the immune system. So all this different collaboration was actually a great opportunity. So I think it's very important when we're doing this kind of research to really open your sound bound and to really go above what you are usually doing.
It's incredible because not only are we talking about international boundaries, but we're talking interdisciplinary boundaries. And so you have the alignment internationally and across all disciplines against one target. It's incredible the progress that's being made in such a short time with such force. That's amazing. Dr. Schimmer, we hear a lot about data science and artificial intelligence, and we know it's obviously a focus in the Cancer Center's strategic plan. I'm wondering how big data and AI have supported our COVID-19 research and perhaps even accelerated the process.
So as you mentioned, Megan, the global scientific community is throwing everything they've got against COVID-19. All disciplines in science are contributing, whether it's molecular and cellular biology, clinical trials, genomics, and artificial intelligence and data science. All are contributing, and certainly data science and artificial intelligence to no exception. If you think back to the early days, and it's hard to remember those early days of COVID, but artificial intelligence was playing a key role in helping diagnose COVID infection. This was, for example, at a time when testing wasn't as widely available. You couldn't easily get a nasal swab to see if you were infected. And recognizing patterns, for example, on chest X-ray and CT scan were an important way to diagnose presumed or potential COVID infection. And many of those algorithms were being used by machine learning to help speed up and recognize signs of COVID infection that just the naked eye couldn't otherwise appreciate. Data science has and continues to play a big part in the fight against COVID infection. Data science and analyzing big data is being used to track cases, identify hotspots, and most importantly, predict where that next hotspot is going to emerge so that one can then proactively intervene into that region and community to try to dampen things down before it spreads too far. So like all disciplines, AI, big data, data science, major contributors in our fight globally against COVID, and contributing here as well at Princess Margaret and in Canada.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, in addition to your science, each of you is a clinician scientist who has continued to see patients during the pandemic. And we have heard a lot about smart cancer care here on Future Forward. Dr. Ali Berlin joined us just a few weeks ago to tell the story of the launch of smart cancer care throughout in our response to COVID-19. At the Princess Margaret and the creation of our new virtual care program. Can you tell us about your experience with virtual care and what's the feedback that you've received from your patients? We'll start with you, Dr. Shan.
Yeah, I think overall, I have transitioned a lot of my patient visits now to virtual care, and the feedback, so far has been great. I think the technology advances that has happened in the past few years has really allowed us to interact with our patients in a meaningful manner, and a lot of our patients really like it. They like the convenience of it, and I think this is something that will continue when the COVID-19 pandemic is over.
Amazing, amazing. Dr. Lheureux, how about you?
So when actually I heard the virtual care, I thought really globally as well, following your initial question globally. The virtual care was actually key in this pandemic because it was a virtual care for my family that is abroad in France. So it allowed me to keep connection with them. And, at the same level, I need to keep connection with my patients. So the virtual care has been essential to do that. So I think it has been a great tool that we use during this pandemic, but I agree with Stephen that will stay because there's many advantages of virtual care. It's allow you to keep connection with your patient. I think it's also important to really have a kind of a face-to-face discussion, to still see the patient in front, so to develop new tools to make sure that we can see each other virtually, but see each other. And also avoid the patient to come to the hospital, really do the virtual care in a different time as well. We don't necessarily need to be at 9 a.m. in the morning. If sometimes it's convenient to do at different times, that's okay as well. Virtual care have a little bit flexibility that can be very patient-centered as well. So I think virtual care is very important. I think there's still some patients that will require to come to the hospital. And I think it's where we will need to have a lot of flexibility now in our healthcare system to have both systems together, because some virtual care will be completely adapted for some patients, but some patients will require still to come to the hospital to be seen for physical examination or for specific discussion. So I think what we will move forward would be to try to have this combined clinic between virtual and also in person as well.
Like a hybrid.
Yeah.
And how about you? What's been your experience, Dr. Schimmer?
So it's been dramatic. Overnight, my clinic changed completely. Prior to COVID, all patients were to be seen in person. Many would travel hours for their clinical appointments. And as Dr. Lheureux stated, because of hospital infrastructure, clinics could not start any earlier than 9 a.m. Overnight, over half my patients are currently being seen virtually. I start my calls at 7:45 in the morning. Patients don't need to travel any farther than it takes to get to their telephone. And I think it's just dramatically changed the way that we're providing care. And I think that's asking me one of the other positive things that's going to come from this is a new way to think about how do we provide the best possible care for our patients and not driving hours sometimes in their best interest.
Absolutely, absolutely. Only when they need to. So the next one is back to you, Dr. Chan and Dr. Lheureux. The Princess Margaret is known as a top cancer research center on the international stage. And you both were recruited fairly recently and had offers from other institutions around the world. So what was it about the Princess Margaret that made this spot the right choice for you? I'll start with you, Dr. Chan.
Yeah, I think what really convinced me that Princess Margaret was the right choice for me was the people. It's very simple from that perspective, including Dr. Schimmer. To me, it is critical to work in a place where I can interact with world-class scientists and clinicians. And at PMH, I can literally walk down the hall and talk with scientists who are world-class leaders in the field. And working in a highly collaborative environment. And that's very important for me. I really believe that, having that level of expertise surrounding myself and my staff is really crucial for my development as a clinician scientist.
It's a pretty extraordinary space here at the corner of university and college with all of these academic institutions, U of T, the Vector Institute, Mars. It's a pretty exceptional corridor. There's no question.
Absolutely, it's amazing.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Lheureux? What brought you here from France?
I think it's a difficult question.
Wait till my next one. No, I'm kidding.
So I think, I think I will agree, is really the panel of expertise. And the COVID-19 was a really great example of that. So the studies that we're currently running at Princess Margaret, the response study to really assess the impact of COVID-19 in the immunity, it's done with a panel of experts. And that has been run so quickly. That is quite amazing. In the meantime, we completely changed and went with virtual care. So that's, show actually how much expertise is at Princess Margaret. So it's also interesting to see that we have different people with different background, and each one brings something special. And I think allow you actually to really think outside the box and go beyond your comfort zone as well. And I think that is a key for innovation, because if you don't have this, multidisciplinary, multicultural approach, I think, that can be limited sometimes. It's challenging sometimes. I don't say the contrary, but it's really the key driver for innovation. And I think Princess Margaret has this place of these different expertise, and it's a great place to work. So I think it's why the choice was made to stay here.
Dr. Schimmer, do you have anything to add? I mean, you have the pleasure of leading the research team here at Princess Margaret with such an international, coalition of cancer fighters working in all of our labs. Anything you want to add to what brings everyone here?
Well, I like to think it's because of having a great research director, but maybe that's just my personal bias. But all kidding aside, it's really not because of me. It is because of the great environment and the people that we've created. That within a 5-minute walk, you can find an expert in whatever it is you're happy to be working on. That's very unique to Toronto. But underlying all this, and so why do people want to be here? Why is it such a great place? It's because we're really supported by a tremendous community, a great foundation staff and leadership, and really a great group of community supporters who believe in what we're doing here at the Princess Margaret and know that the impact that we're having is affecting our patients here in Canada and around the world. And without that tremendous support, none of this would have actually been able to occur.
There's no question that our supporters are really the incredible power behind the Princess Margaret Research Institute. We all know it would not be what it is today without their support. I just have one more question before we go out to our Slido, because our audience, I think, has a series of questions to ask. With everyone being at home, obviously you've had a few things on your plate as well, whether it's family or cancer research, COVID research. What are you doing to stay healthy and decompress during the pandemic? Have you developed any fun new interests? What have you learned about yourself? We'll start with you, Dr. Lheureux.
So first I need to make sure my husband and kids are okay to be able to actually take care of myself, and that's the same for the patient. I need to make sure that is done. But definitely we need to take care of yourself to take care of others as well. So actually, my father being a farmer, I rediscovered what is gardening. So I went back to the ground and tried to garden. It's been quite an experience, and actually I discovered why my dad was working so much.
It's a lot of work.
But it's a lot of work, so I now finally understand why he works so much and so long.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. How about you, Dr. Chan?
Yeah, so like many others, I try to stay active and eat healthy and sleep well. Despite some nights being very difficult with the stress associated with the pandemic, and stay in touch with my family. And interestingly, like Stephanie, I found myself really drawn to gardening in the past couple of months as well. Like I found it very allows me to decompress and focus on something else. So I've been trying a lot to make my lawn look great. Getting there. It's getting there.
That's wonderful. How about you, Dr. Schimmer?
So my wife, Etty, and I, we've been doing a lot more bike riding. In fact, now that the weather's been getting better, we had gotten new bikes that we were planning on using for the Ride to Conquer Cancer, but we're out on them now every weekend. And so we're going to be ready come 2021.
And you can still participate in the virtual ride on August 29th. We've got thousands of people riding virtually, actually even outside of Ontario joining us. So when we think about an international coalition, we're engaging many people to participate. That's wonderful. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to see what questions we've received from our audience and switch over to our Slido screen. So I'll just give them a moment to do that. Oh, lots of questions. So the first question is, I can understand that because of COVID-19, some kinds of research have been significantly accelerated. How do we keep this kind of fast track momentum going once the pandemic is past and or a vaccine is found? And I'm going to direct that one to you, Dr. Schimmer.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that's one of the positive things that have come from COVID, and we need to make sure that we don't lose this momentum. Now, to be honest with you, some of it is because groups are truly working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and some of that's not sustainable. But much of it represents changes in practice. And those, I think, will persist. And I do anticipate that we're going to be able to maintain this quicker momentum. And I think it just becomes from the recognition that this can be done. And then people sitting down and saying, in retrospect, did we need many of these steps that simply seemed to lengthen time and didn't necessarily perhaps add as much to the process. So I do think that we're going to see, even when COVID passes, much of the fast track momentum being able to continue.
Brilliant, brilliant. Next one is, I understand that the Princess Margaret and the University Health Network were at the forefront of lobbying government to ensure that research staff across Canada were eligible for wage subsidies. What was involved in this process? And I am going to direct this one again to you as our research director, Dr. Schimmer.
You know, this was a concerted effort from the UHN research leadership, the foundation leadership, everyone participating at all levels. I mean, lobbying to some degree is correct, but I think it was simply highlighting the significant need that there was in research. And yes, it took a fair bit of effort to explain that need, but I think right from the beginning, there was a clear recognition that research was going to play a major role in helping us get us through COVID. And the last thing that you wanted to do was to have research being shut down at such a critical time. So I think everyone was on board, and thanks to the tremendous leadership at UHN and the foundation, we're able to ensure that this support came through.
Brilliant. Our next question is, what happens to the treatment plan when a patient undergoes treatment, tests positive for COVID-19? And maybe Dr. Lheureux, I'll pass that to you.
Yeah, no, so that is a very important question for us and for the patient, because it's still a lot to be learned. So it's why we build this kind of study to try to really assess the impact of COVID-19 or any immune dysregulation during treatment. These specific guidelines that has been established at Princess Margaret, we have created a committee that have wrote some specific guidelines, and it's always a balance between the benefit and the risk, and it depends a lot about what is the symptoms of the COVID-19. It really depends also on the type of cancer and the urgency to start the treatment. But some principle and guidelines has been established in our center through this committee, and it's always a discussion with the physician. But I think it's an important question, and it's important also to be preventive and cautious. So it's why now we have all the system in place to try to avoid, the dissemination of the COVID-19 as well in the hospital, to not have this situation coming too often. I also want, if I can, I wanted to jump on the first question on this panel, if I can.
Yes, please.
Because I think, it's very important. I completely agree. Why we're doing research for COVID-19, I think it's very important to continue to be committed to the research that we are supposed to do. Because as we mentioned at the beginning, cancer is not going away. So it's our responsibility as well to make sure, and thanks to the support that we receive, that we continue to conquer cancer. And I think the study that we are doing will also allow us to learn more about the impact of our treatment we're doing across cancer type. And for example, in gynecological cancer, all our disease sites are participating in this study. And we will allow actually to understand what is the impact of doing a surgery in your immune system, what is the impact of doing chemo, or what is the impact of radiation. So yes, in a way it's related to the COVID, but we will learn also from the patient who do not have COVID-19 and try to understand also the impact of a patient in the immune system. But I think definitely, we are remaining to be committed to further research in our specific role of cancer doctor.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you for adding that. The next one is a broader public health question. The health impact of the disease goes beyond the pathogen, and mental health issues related to unemployment, social isolation, and economic recession are really starting to show their toll. Has Canada evaluated the morbidity of the disease to date? And maybe just comment on your thoughts around these sort of co-occurring issues around the disease. Do I have a volunteer who'd like to take that one?
I'm happy to jump in, Megan.
Great, thanks.
It's very clear that the mental health implications of COVID are very significant. And there actually are efforts to understand those implications on different groups. So I can even give you an example of what's happened at the Princess Margaret and UHN. And so we have actually taken, looking at trainees, the various student populations who are in UHN research, both on the wet lab side and also on the clinical trainee side, and understand the impact that COVID-19 has had on their mental health and mental well-being. And it is becoming apparent through the surveys that, perhaps not unexpectedly, COVID-19 has had a major impact on the progress of their research. That, I think, to some degree was expected. But we also discovered that many individuals had experienced increased anxiety during this period of time. And as a result of that, we've partnered with our psychosocial oncology group and have started to implement virtual sessions to help our trainees deal with the anxiety associated with COVID-19. And so there's certainly effort here locally, and much of this is extending as well across the country and even beyond to understand these important implications to this virus.
That's wonderful to hear. Thinking about students and learners, it's such a big part of the work we do, both in the research labs and in the Cancer Center. I understand some of that may have stopped during, I think, the height of COVID-19, but at the same time, it's an incredible time to be learning, because what a rich environment to learn in. How do you see that continuing to move forward just as we're reopening the research labs? What does the road ahead look like for engagement of students and learners in the Cancer Center and our labs?
Yeah, one point also to make about the learners that you've implied is that, many have actually come here to Princess Margaret for their training, and they've left their family and their friends at home, and in many cases they're kind of here alone in the city, which can be difficult at the best of times. But in the context of a quarantine, that is particularly difficult for them. It has major impacts on their mental health. And so these are things that we're aware of. We are addressing them through a variety of means, including these sessions with our psychosocial oncology group. We've got multiple avenues with which our learners can reach out and get help if needed. But training also becomes important to continue during this time. Again, COVID will pass, but cancer won't. And we need to be training that next generation of cancer research. There's also critical to our fight against cancer, even in the current day. And so a number of things, we're seeing the reopening of research labs. It's allowing us to return to the important research that we had been doing. But our trainees have been continuing through this period of time to work from home, to continue to receive mentorship from their supervisors, and to be working from home on things whenever possible. So whether it's analyzing data, writing up their manuscripts for publication, writing up their PhD or master's thesis for defense, there are many things that they can be working on, tempered with the understanding that sometimes it's not so simple to work from home, that one has sometimes childcare or other responsibilities, and that we can't expect the same level of productivity. We have to recognize all the other things that may be happening in their background.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Our next one is a question actually with the World Health Organization, so even a bit broader. With the U.S. pulling out of the World Health Organization, where do you believe we're going to see the biggest impact? Specifically, the coronavirus has already eaten up a lot of the WHO's resources, taking funding away from other programs, and now the U.S. has announced they'll be withdrawing. How do you believe they will determine their priorities? What are your thoughts on the impact of these changes at the World Health Organization in the global fight against cancer?
I'm happy to jump in. Maybe everyone can contribute as well.
Yeah. Why don't you take a start on that?
Obviously, I have no personal inside knowledge as to how the WHO is going to react to this. Of course, I can just give you my own personal thoughts. And
Absolutely.
I think that they're going to really have to become a leaner machine. They're going to have to relook, as the question implies, at what are they going to focus on. I think in the short term, it'll continue to be COVID-19, but they do have mandates beyond COVID-19 into other infectious diseases. But even beyond infectious diseases, there's some things that they look at. I think that you'll probably see greater partnership with more regional and country-based organizations to try to spread their reach a little further in light of perhaps the reduced budget. And like many groups are going to be struggling with funding in the post-COVID-19 period, this is going to be one group as well. But that's, again, just my personal opinion. Drs. Chan and Lheureux may also want to comment.
Dr. Chan, Dr. Lheureux, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess it's unfortunate. I think that WHO is losing funding at this critical time. But I do think that their priority. I think at least in the short term, I hope and I think they will continue to be focused on COVID-19. But like Dr. Schimmer said, I do. They are involved in a lot of other infectious diseases and then in other diseases as well. So but if funding or is taken away for those other programs, that would be challenging for them to continue those interests.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The last question on our Slido, before we go back to one round of questions I have for everyone, is around managing side effects and symptoms. Are there any recent innovations in supporting patients to manage their side effects and symptoms of cancer as a result of COVID-19? And maybe I'll start with you, Dr. Chan, if you have anything you want to add on that, or if there's someone else who wants to jump in.
I don't know. Stephanie, do you have some insights into recent innovation?
This big umbrella protocol, which is called UDeploy at UHN level, trying to assess different aspects of the COVID-19. I think there is different initiatives that has been done, but currently, through the management of the side effect, remain for now purely medical. So depending if the patient need to be admitted or not. The infectious disease as well has been quite involved in this process as well. Like the infectious disease team has been follow this patient quite well and have put also virtual care as well to try to help with this potential side effect. In terms of specific symptoms related to COVID-19, definitely we need to learn more because we begin to know that the symptom can be quite variable, patient to patient. So it's why we need to study. And I think it will be in the short term, we begin to know about the short term of the side effect. Do we have or not long-term side effect as well? So I think that is important that we need to collect this information. So it's why this kind of response study will collect all this information, and we hope to have data that we can analyze soon and eventually act on that. And that go with the other question that we had before. It's true that the COVID-19 have significant impact in so many different ways. So I think it's why it's important to continue this study as well, to collect more information we can and see with time how we can support each other.
You think with all of this data that's being captured in this the time there'll be so much learning that we can do from it over so many years to come. Yeah. We just had one other question come in around COVID testing. If someone dies of unknown causes, do any of you know if there is an automatic test for COVID-19 in order to allow family members to be advised if they should be tested? Maybe Dr. Schimmer, I'll point that at you. Are you aware of anything around that? Or do you know a resource where this individual could find out an answer to that question?
There's certainly an Ontario COVID website that might have the answer to this question. I'm not aware of automatic testing for unfortunately every death that would occur of unknown causes. I think that if there was certainly any suspicion of COVID, then it might be arranged. I don't think at the moment that's an automatic policy for all, but I may be unaware of that, in which case, I would encourage them to look at the Ontario COVID website. That would certainly have more information and may have something around this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we're just going to close Slido. I've got one other question, a personal question for each of you. In addition to your gardening that you've been doing during this time, there's people have had the opportunity to, whether it's reflecting, reading, watching Netflix, whatever it is. Are there any books, articles, movies that you've particularly found inspiring? I think on the interdisciplinary angle you were talking about earlier, Dr. Lheureux, you never know what direction something's going to be inspiring. What have you read recently, or a podcast that might be something you'd want to share with our viewers to keep them inspired and engaged? We'll start with you, Dr. Chan.
Oh wow. Can't think of one right now. I have been watching Netflix. I'm trying to think of one recent one that comes to my mind. But I think what I've actually tried to do is really try, it is a good thing, I think, having resources like Netflix and Disney Plus and to really I think just to keep my mind off thinking about COVID, and that has been very essential in just keeping my stress level down and just being focused on something else, even if just for a short period of time.
Absolutely.
So nothing concrete that came out that was so great that
Yeah.
I would sort of recommend to everyone. But certainly it has helped me cope with the COVID pandemic so
Yeah.
far.
How about you, Dr. Lheureux? Any podcasts or books you might recommend?
So not necessarily. I think I would say it's more people's story. And actually, I was not a big Twitter girl. I was not on Twitter really. But with the need of staying connected, I say, okay, let's go on Twitter, and specifically with our big oncology meeting that was supposed to be in person in June, didn't happen. So all our usually oncology meeting went on live, and I realized that there's a lot of Twitter things about all these different congress. So actually, I begin to follow Twitter, and it's there's a lot of small word in Twitter, which actually is very practical when you have a busy day, because I can't read a full book. And so actually when at the end of the day, and it depends, but I feel that Twitter was a good way of having just small words of few people that actually found very inspiring during this time. I followed some people that actually was so I'm doing that either in the morning, early morning, or at night. And I found some tweets that was very inspiring in the morning to start my day. So that was my little plus.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. How about you, Dr. Schimmer? Anything to add?
Well, only in the sense that, it's amazing what platforms, whether it is Zoom or MS Teams or these virtual platforms, allow ones to do for entertainment, and that one can connect with friends, even if you can't physically be in front of them, you can connect in ways like this, whether we're watching real-time comedy shows on Zoom, music, participating in murder mysteries or scavenger hunts. It's a way that one can stay connected with people in a way that, probably wasn't possible even just a few years ago. And while I guess I don't have a particular specific podcast that I can tell you about, it's the culmination of doing all of these things on Zoom that I think has provided a bit of that sort of stress relief and outlet for some of those downtimes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that staying connected has been so important, and we're so lucky to have the technology tools we do today. And just like with our webinar today, it's allowed us to be able to connect you with so many of our supporters. And we so appreciate your time for joining us today. We appreciate everyone who has submitted or voted on a question. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephanie, for telling us all about the work you're involved with here. It's so clear your passion for helping our patients drives your search for answers. I think we all feel more informed about some of the promising research happening now at the Princess Margaret, and it is so reassuring to know that great people like you are continuing to make incredible progress in support of COVID-19, and of course, even more importantly, towards our vision of conquering cancer in our lifetime. Our last session of this series will be the changing face of supportive care, which is really appropriate given all the conversation we've had today around mental health. It will feature Dr. Camilla Zimmerman and Dr. Sarah Hales, who will speak about the Princess Margaret's internationally recognized supportive care program. This department focuses on our impact of cancer of the entire person, including the social, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and functional aspects of their cancer experience. I sincerely hope you will all join us. You can register for the final Future Forward session at our website at thepmcf.ca/webinars. There is a donate button on our Slido page, and if you felt inspired by what you heard today, please consider making a donation. I hope you all enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you at our last session on July 28th. Until then, we hope that you all remain safe and well.